Yes, my friends, the preseason is over, and now we are entering the most stressful time of the year. Final roster cuts. Dan Campbell said it best. This year, it's going to be brutal. For the first time since Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes took over, they are facing decisions that are going to be really tough. Some really talented players, guys we've grown accustomed to seeing back in the Honolulu Blue, are going to be looking for new teams. Get ready, because this week we'll have a lot of news. And I'm going to start with something that will generate a lot of opinions among fans. Before we continue, make sure you've already hit the like button if you truly believe that the Detroit Lions will make it to the next Super Bowl. If possible, write it like this: I believe. By 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the 53-man roster will be set in stone. And let's be real, the Lions are notoriously slow with these things. Last year, the list didn't drop until hours after the deadline, even though the decisions were already made. So, brace yourselves. We might be in for another wait. But when it does drop, there will be some shockers. Let's dive into some predictions based on Pride of Detroit's final 53-man roster and my own thoughts on where we're heading. Starting with the quarterbacks, they have us keeping 3: Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, and Nate Sudfeld. Now, I love the Pride of Detroit crew, but this is where I'm throwing a flag. Sudfeld? Really? He's been with us for 2 years, but we saw Jake Fromm come in for 8 minutes of preseason action, and in that short time, he looked leagues better than Sudfeld. I mean, come on. If we're keeping a third quarterback, I'd much rather roll with Fromm. Sudfeld is, frankly, not NFL roster material at this point. So yeah, I disagree here. I'm not seeing the value in keeping Sudfeld when Fromm is clearly outshining him. Moving on to running backs, we're projected to keep 4: Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, and Devine Ozigbo. No surprises here. Jamar Jefferson, Zonovan Knight, and Jake Funk all had their moments. But let's be honest, it's time for Jamar to move on. This is a tough room to crack. And Craig Reynolds, he's a lock. This dude keeps proving his worth over and over again, and Ozigbo showed us some flashes that we can't ignore. So yeah, I'm all in on this group. Now, wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Khalif Raymond are locked in. But here's where it gets interesting. Pride of Detroit has Donovan Peoples-Jones making the cut. But I'm telling you, this is a make-or-break moment. If he doesn't make this roster, that's 3 wide receivers Brad Holmes has traded for that haven't stuck. Denzel Mims, Trinity Benson, and now Peoples-Jones? If Peoples-Jones doesn't make it, that's an L on Brad Holmes. And look, I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. We've got a shot at the Super Bowl, and this kind of mistake could be costly. Tight ends are another tricky spot. Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, and Shane Zylstra are pretty much locks. But Parker Hesse sneaking in as a 4th tight end? I don't see it. James Mitchell's likely out. And to me, we're better off rolling with 3 tight ends and adding an extra wide receiver. The initial 53 will probably see that adjustment, especially given how much we're focusing on dynamic offense this season. On the defensive side, let's talk defensive ends. We've got Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, and Josh Paschal. But here's where I have a real issue: the inclusion of James Houston over Matthew Betts. I'm calling it now. This is a mistake. Betts has shown more versatility and strength. I get the potential Houston showed last year, but potential doesn't win games. Performance does. And Betts is the guy you want when it's crunch time. I know the Pride of Detroit crew is high on Houston, but after watching them both this preseason, Betts has the higher ceiling right now. If he doesn't make the roster, I'll be shaking my head. Linebacker is another interesting area. Ben Neiman is looking like a surprise pick here. Ty Summers has also been in the mix. And between the two of them, it's going to come down to who can show up on special teams. Neiman's been making plays, but Summers has that late-season grind that might give him the edge. It's a tough call. And honestly, this is one of those positions that will probably fluctuate once we see other teams' cuts and waivers. We might pick up someone from another roster. Let's not forget the secondary. Corners and safeties are looking solid with Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, and Ifeatu Melifonwu likely locks. But here's a shocker. There's talk about cutting CJ Moore. Let me tell you, that would be a mistake. Moore is a special teams ace, and you don't bring a guy back after a gambling suspension just to cut him. I see Moore making the 53-man roster, even over someone like Brandon Joseph, who hasn't really proven he's anything more than a practice squad guy at this point. Special teams matter, and Moore's the guy for that job. Speaking of special teams, Jack Fox, Jake Moody, and Scott Daly should be your guys. Fox is one of the best punters in the league, and Daly's got chemistry with him. This is not the time to mess with that formula. Moody's had some shaky moments, but the talent is there. Let's ride with him and see how this young kicker can grow. All right, Lions Nation, that's where we're at with the 53-man roster. I agree with a lot of what Pride of Detroit put out, but there are some spots where I'm going to stand my ground. Sudfeld at QB? No way. Houston over Betts? Hard pass. And CJ Moore has to make this team if we want a solid special teams unit. What do you all think? Are you with me on these takes, or do you think I'm off the mark? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. All right, Lions fans, we've got some breaking news that's sure to get you hyped for the season opener. Defensive lineman DJ Reader has officially passed his physical and is no longer on the active PUP list. That's right. The man who's going to be a key part of our pass rush this season is trending in the right direction. If you're excited to see our defensive line wreak havoc on quarterbacks, Reader's return is a big deal. Let's break this down. So here's what happened. The Detroit Lions announced via Twitter that DJ Reader is no longer on the physically unable to perform list. Now, if he had stayed on that list, it could have caused some issues for the team moving forward. But we kind of saw this coming, right? Reader's been working hard to get back, and the Lions made the smart move here. But hold on, before we get too far ahead, this doesn't necessarily mean Reader is guaranteed to play in the season opener. While he's making progress, the Lions are being cautious, and we might not know his status until the injury reports start coming out closer to game time. Still, getting him off the PUP list is huge. Let me explain why. According to NFL rules, players who are still on the PUP list by the time final cutdowns happen, Tuesday at 4 p.m., have to either be placed on reserve PUP, released, traded, or counted against the 53-man roster. By removing him from the list now, the Lions avoid those options, giving them more flexibility. Now, if Reader isn't quite ready for Week 1, there's a chance they could place him on short-term injured reserve, which would sideline him for the first 4 games. But here's the thing. Teams only get to bring players off IR 8 times in a season, so the Lions are going to be strategic with how they use those slots. If they did put Reader on short-term IR, that would burn one of those 8 return designations. So, unless they absolutely have to do that, they'll likely keep him active, but just not play him in the first couple of games. Reader's been pretty vague about his readiness for Week 1, but we know one thing for sure. The Lions aren't going to rush him back. This is a long season, and they're going to need him healthy, especially as we get deeper into the schedule. Go Lions!